And if that foot is in a configuration like this horse is in right now, we call it broken back, he's got a lot of pressure back here. So even though he's sound, if you put a horse to heavy work like this in this kind of bone alignment, you're taking your chances on him staying sound. You know, just because they're out of alignment doesn't mean they're crippled, but you're setting the stage. You're setting the stage for problems to come if we don't address it correctly. Dennis here at Capsule Training and Shoeing. You might be wondering why that we put these videos up, and today we're going to talk about shoeing, and I think it really sums up as to why we do these videos. We're wanting to help people that haven't had access to years of experience, maybe don't know who to listen to or what advice to take. So we're offering advice based on several decades of experience. You know, I've been, as far as the shoeing goes, I've been in several different camps, several different trains of thought. And my thought process has always been for the horse, you know, and if there was an idea that came along that I thought benefited the horse, I was right there. I didn't care about what, you know, people thought it should be. I was more interested in the horse. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This horse is extremely long, and he's, because of the extra length, he's got quite a bit of distortion. So we're going to talk a little bit about that distortion. I want to show you a little bit here how I'm thinking and what I'm doing with this model. Would you think that the outer appearance of the foot would be the best thing to judge a shoeing job on, or do you think there might be some things that might just perhaps be, from his perspective, a little more important? And naturally, the answer to that is, I like a pretty shoeing job just as much as anybody, but it does not necessarily have to be pretty on the outside to be functional on the inside. And to me, this is the most important part of the horse's foot and leg, especially when it comes to soundness, longevity, performance. This dummy here has got the same scenario going on that this live horse does. This is the long pastern bone right here, and it's fairly straight up and down in this dummy. Now this is P2, or the short pastern, and P2 is behind. It's what we call being subluxated, and that means that it is behind the long pastern, and this is the coffin bone here. So whenever this horse loads up on his body, the weight is going out through the rear. And guess what's out to the rear of P2? That little bone right there is the navicular bone. And we hear an awful lot, you know, when a horse gets a little off in the front end, well, he's got navicular. Well, navicular is this bone right here. And, you know, navicular syndrome is a condition that can affect this coffin joint area. And I agree with Gene Overnick, and he said that he feels like that 90% of all lamenesses come from this coffin joint area because of poor alignment. So that's what we're going to talk about here today, is how to look at your horse, how to look at the hairline, how to look at the foot itself, and determine whether or not you've got, you know, a decent alignment, or if your horse needs some help. This horse is extremely long. This might have been a good shoeing job when it was first placed on there, but he's probably been, by the looks of his feet, you know, several months since he's been done. He just came in here, so we're just doing him today. But there was so much to see on it, reason I wanted to use him for an example. The hairline, to me, is very important as far as telling me what's going on the inside of that horse's foot. I like for that hairline to be on an angle that's fairly flat to the ground. Naturally, there's going to be a little elevation up, but if we got a hairline, especially like in his back one, that one he's resting back there, that hairline's shooting almost straight up to the sky. And when I see a hairline that is shooting upwards like this from the ground up, I know I'm dealing with a horse that would have what's known as a negative palmar angle, which means that the coffin bone is closer to the ground at the rear of the foot than it is at the front. And when that happens, every time that horse loads up on his foot, there's a tremendous amount of strain that goes on this deep digital flexor tendon, and it comes down around, around over the back of the pastern and over the navicular bone and attaches to the coffin bone. And if that foot is in a configuration like this horse is in right now, we call it broken back. He's got a lot of pressure back here. So even though he's sound, if you put a horse to heavy work like this in this kind of bone alignment, you're taking your chances on him staying sound. Just because they're out of alignment doesn't mean they're crippled, but you're setting the stage. You're setting the stage for problems to come if we don't address it correctly. So the foot grows a new foot from the hairline to the ground, and it takes a year to get from here to the ground on average. Sometimes it's going to take a little longer, and sometimes it'll be a little quicker depending on nutrition, depending on environment, depending on the horses. Some horses are going to grow faster than others, depending on, there's a lot of variables in there. But on an average situation, it takes a year to get from the hairline to the ground. So when I'm looking at that foot, that's the part of the hoof that I'm thinking about protecting, is the new growth coming out of the hairline. And a lot of people are subscribed to the idea that bigger is better when it comes to feet. And yes and maybe no. If let's say that this is the hoof wall. If we've got that hoof wall, and this would be the hairline up here that I have a hold of, and that foot's coming down on an angle like this, getting wider as it goes down, yes, it's going to have a bigger base on the ground, but is that better? I'm telling you this, I don't believe it is, because when it gets out here wider and wider and wider, and you take especially a heavy horse like this, when he loads up on that hoof wall, all of a sudden he's got a prying effect that's taking that hoof wall away from the support that he needs in the center of his foot. The whole bottom of the foot needs to be a support system. So I'm thinking about trying to arrange that hoof wall so that I get a nearly straight from the hairline to the ground support. And that's a little narrower than some schools of thought want that feet to be, but that's okay. I mean, I'm not here to condemn another one. I'm just telling you that over the years, this is what I've come around to, that I believe the horses have convinced me through soundness, through performance, through living longer, that what I'm telling you is the truth. And the truth will win out over tradition. I like traditional things, but the truth will win out over tradition, because sometimes tradition gets formed in opinions, and those opinions are usually human opinions, and we're looking at it from the horse's perspective. So let me take this shoe off and show you what I'm looking at the bottom of the foot. Now, you see how that shoe is, the foot is grown out over the shoe, and so there was nothing to hold this horse up back here. His foot just grew forward, and now the shoe is going right up into the bars of his foot, and still this old horse is sound. I mean, this is sure not good, but it didn't cause him to be lame, but he can't take this like this very long. When I look at certain marks on the bottom of the foot, one of the most important marks for me to find is the center of the foot. And let me dig this dirt out here a little bit so we can see better. Anything that will come out easily Anything that flakes out needs to come out, so we can see where when we get down to live sole, there's a lot of excess foot in this horse's foot. Now, where these bars terminate into the frog, right here, when I've got a shoe on, that's about the only way I can tell where center of the foot is accurately, but that's the center of this horse's foot. Now look how much, let's draw a line across here where center is. Look how much of that shoe is in front of center, and look how much is behind. So there's nothing to hold this horse up behind, and he's got a tremendous amount of toes sticking out in front of him. What is that going to do for the horse? When he sits down, that's going to hold his foot on the ground longer than it needs to. It's going to stretch the back of his tendons. It's going to cause him to pick his foot up overly animated, so he's going to compensate for what's going on down here in his foot because of that. So let's see what we can do to help him out. I'm just cutting the clinches off here. Shoe stayed on. That's oftentimes what people want to say is that makes a good horse shoer if the shoes stay on. Yes, I agree, the shoes need to stay on, but don't let that be your only criteria to tell how good your horse is being shod, because sometimes the shoe just staying on wasn't on there right to start with. Could have been. You can put a shoe on that's way too little and anchor it on with all the nails and it'll stay on. But your horse won't like it very well. Okay, so now we're going to go to this shoe. I've got the clinches cut off on the outside, and we'll just get that shoe off there and give this old boy some relief. Okay. What I'm going to do now is just clean out the bottom of this horse's foot. Anything that is chalky, that looks like it needs to come out, I'm going to take it out. And it's going to take more than one trip around with the nippers to get to this horse. And back here, where the frog and the sole and the hoof wall meet, right there, that's a pretty good place to start talking about, to find out where we need to bring the heels to. This that I'm marking on right here is the central sulcus. And because this foot was so long, this frog has not had ample contact with the ground as it should. So this frog has atrophied. It's stretched forward and it's narrower than it should be. The central sulcus is wide and it has a hard bottom. That's good. That means that the frog is healthy. But this would be the very back of the coffin bone right here, right out here where the cut a little bit off here to show you where the frog meets the sole. I'm just cleaning this up so you can see a little better. Wouldn't have to have trimmed anything out of there. In fact, you don't want to go much deeper at all there with that frog, or he'll be yelling at us. Where this frog and the sole meet, 1 inch behind that area will be the center of his foot, where these bars terminate into the widest part of the sole there's our center mark. Okay, back here at the back of the foot, I'm looking to see where the hoof starts to drift forward, and right there would be a place, and right there. So that's where I'm going to bring my heels back to, and I'll trim at a spot up to that center mark on an angle, kind of like that. From there up to the center mark. Now in front of that center, I'm going to just follow the sole around, and I got to find out where my breakover line is, and that should be approximately 2 inches in front of this center mark. Okay, so that's where I want my breakover to be. Here's my center mark, and here's where I'm going to bring the hoof wall back to. Now then, because he's got a lot of foot, we can get pretty aggressive and get that hoof wall off there. I've trimmed from the heel up to center. Now if you notice, I'm going to leave this here. You see, the last place this horse was touching the ground was right here. But by trimming that heel off, we move his support back. See, we move his support back from here to here. So we gained a 1/2 inch of support for him towards the rear of his leg just by trimming that little that little bit of heel off. And that don't sound like very much maybe, but you know, on a distance no longer than a horse's foot, a 1/2 inch or 1 inch is a long ways. So now I'm gonna address getting that hoof wall off. I'm staying above the sole line just slightly, and I'm taking that distorted foot off out in the toe. And then we'll look at the bottom of the foot once I get it trimmed off here. Okay, now it looks like we still got quite a bit of sole here, so I'm going to pare out just a little bit. That sole is still chalky, it's still real soft, so I know we've got some depth that we can go down yet, and it's, we want to find live sole, but we don't want to get him so short that he can't, you know, he needs that protection on the bottom. Dr. Rick Redden always said mass trumps balance for a time. What does that mean? Well, this horse had a lot of mass and he was sound. We can put him in balance. If we trim him too short, he's not going to be sound. So therefore, mass trumped the balance. Now, over time, that mass out there in the form of distortion will cause irreversible lameness. That red you're seeing right there, I'll take this off and then show you. What was happening, this is the lamini out here, and where my thumbnail is and where this thumbnail is, that should be together. So what was happening, because of distortion in this horse's foot, basically every time he'd load up, it would be like somebody taking your thumbnail and just ripping it back up over your foot. So he was feeling that stretching take place in the lamina itself. That would be what we would refer to as a mechanical founder. Is he foundered? No, he's not foundered. But if he'd if distortion would stay there that long, and he would keep prying on it, yeah, it's going to start tearing his hoof wall away from from his foot, and he can't take that. So that's what we're addressing here today, is that distortion. Can you come on the side and look at this foot now? Now, you see how we've got almost a nearly straight line now from here all the way down. There's still a little bit of distortion in that foot, and I'm going to address it on the outside. But that foot is back underneath his leg. That foot has allowed his bone alignment to straighten up. We've arranged it to where this horse, when he puts that foot down on the ground, now he's got a solid foundation to stand on. He's going to be pretty happy about that in a few days. Now tomorrow he might not be too happy about it. Why would he not be too happy about it tomorrow? Maybe. I think he's going to be just fine. But even though he was out of alignment by quite a ways, he'd been used to that for a while. He'd been used to that. So when we put him back into alignment, he's going to have some internal regeneration. He's going to have things are going to come back together, and it can be because the circulation was compromised from where it was. You ever have your arm go to sleep, and then you get it where it's not asleep, and then it tingle, and you wonder what the heck's going on? Or you want to leave it asleep so it's dead on you all the time? No, we've got to arrange it so that fluids can flow through that leg, through that foot as they need to, so that this old boy can be comfortable. Okay. Now then, I'm going to address the distortion in the front of this horse's foot. I'll get it here and set this foot right out in front of me. You see that foot's coming down straight to about there, and below it the hoof wall is cracking and running out from his foot. This is more than just cosmetic. This is bringing his foot back into alignment by addressing the excess foot that is distorted out in front of him. Come around the other side here. Now, naturally it looks better, but the looks wasn't the reason why I was doing that. I was just taking that distortion off so we wouldn't have the prying. Okay, that is a number 2, and it's almost a perfect fit for this horse. Let me redraw the map so we can see where we're at. So we have our center mark right across here. This is where we brought the heels back to. I can tell I need to lower that heel just a little bit based on where my mark is. And then we've got 2 inches in front. So there's where we want our breakover to be, right there. Now, this particular shoe is made so that the breakover is right here. So you see when I put that shoe back there, and these marks here tell me where center is, so it lines up directly over center. I just need to shape the heels just a little bit and it's ready to nail on. But anyway, that's the process of reading the foot, addressing the distortion. Now it's just the mechanics of nailing the shoe onto a good trim. So thank you very much.